Hey there, rulers. DMO73 here, bringing you a feature match between myself using my partner in crime, Kimihe, versus Paul and his updated take on Olivia. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprime.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product, the Ruler School Circuit Series now taking orders on our Q4 2024 circuit kits, and to our guest lecturer members, Vite Ramen and Casey Madden. Class is in session. Okay, so as we get into it here, the breakdown for the Kimihe build is that it is trying to make use of green cards to take advantage to get us to ramp up with things like Sympathy of Fire and Wind or Guardian Dragon to kind of apply some generic pressure, all the while it makes using Kimihe to hit your opponents, cards that make them kind of lose trades with -X counters, all the while with things like, Robo-Meta or stuff like that. And Olivia's doing Olivia things. As you see here, we get that first turn Aspiring Diva into a mirror. We're going to see either a Guardian Dragon or a pass here. Does get the pass. So we're going to switch that over to Paul. Down comes the God's Art for Dolly. This is going to get to probably produce an extra will, something that would be very good in this matchup if he does have the opening Ray Asnimal, which feels pretty telegraphed here. Yep, there is the Ray Asnimal. So we're going to try to respond to this to try to get some enter effect value before the Asnimal comes down. We'll flash down a Daji that eats the Aspiring Diva to play Mirror, and so that's going to be fine. As we attempt to leave his main phase, though, we're going to go ahead and try to use Kimihe, who can choose. She doesn't target, so she gets around Barrier to put two -1/-1 counters on something, and then go ahead and burn a Smokescreen Bomb here to put two -1/-1 counters on the Dolly after forcing him to banish the Ray Asnimal because he resolved top to bottom. So pretty good value there. Gets us into a pace where we can start playing enter effects again. Answers the first Ray Asnimal. We're in a pretty good spot. And so we'll just pass the turn there. Paul swings in for two. Now we can't put another two -1/-1 counters on it because Kimihe only just puts two. It's X minus or the number of counters on it, where X is 2. And we're going to try to play an old card from Alice Origins, Awakening of the Flame King, to try to cheat in a 3-drop Fire Resonator. That unfortunately, though, is going to eat a Fiola. We would have loved to have seen that. We'll put two more counters on that using Kimihe as he leaves as well. Keep in mind that Kimihe does have to be during the main phase, so that is kind of a little bit of a missequencing there for me. Taking the swings from the shorted guys, and then going to go ahead and go for a Daji here. Try to send a dragon and burn Paul a little bit. Sets us up for being able to draw some more cards if we're kind of drawing dead. We are going to go ahead and do Sympathy of Fire and Wind here as well at the end of his turn to burn him for 8 and get Sympathy to grave. This sets us up for being able to ramp with Sympathy later, because again, it's kind of the point of this deck. We want to kind of take use of some advantage engines and ramp to make use of great things like Guardian Dragon, which, when you have a lot of wills, suddenly you're not as concerned with things like cancels or worried about having to try to walk into mirrors because you can play bigger cards. Down comes the Sphinx. Playing the minigame here, we're going to choose non-chant. We do hit that, so we get to gain 1,300 life. This works out well for me, though. Daji is Sphinx is not a terribly huge problem for Kimihe because we can at least put some minus counters on it and then be able to do something like Smokescreen Bomb. I forget how Daji works here. He plays the Vacus, tries to kill the Guardian Dragon, and then I was like, oh wait, I can only destroy a dragon or a machine to be able to draw cards. So we're going to go ahead and respond to try to draw with the Daji, see if we can maybe get something like Goliath's new command, haha, we're playing in this deck, see if we can maybe protect it. Ultimately, though, it does not get safe. Sphinx is going to get to swing in, hits me for the 13. He gets to gain 13. And then a pass there. We're going to try to take advantage of the fact that he has now gained some life to kind of reset us back down a little bit by throwing out another Daji. So if we get to send another dragon to grave here, which it does look like we're going to get to do, thankfully, this is going to then deal 1,800 damage to Paul. He's going to take the 500 plus the 1,300 that he gained off of the Sphinx, which is great. We like being able to say, hey, I know you think you made some progress, but ultimately not. The Daji will be able to do what we need it to do during our turn, so it won't have to swing into the Sphinx. And we will also be able to then apply those -X counters. So he's going to go to my turn. We're going to try to use Vakis on the Daji. We'll sack it to draw and discard. Discard a Shiva from hand. You will notice that I am playing Shivas in the main deck as well as the sideboard. That is because of things like the Awakening of the Flame King works really nicely, as well as with Kimihe specifically, when she does Judgment, any damage is dealt as -X counters. So we can do some pretty cool things with a Shiva to kill things that have Eternal, which is nice. So down comes the Shiva. A Girl Staring At gets cast in response, but we do have Goliath's command, Destroy Point MQ M59, to be able to put that RFG it face down. We put it on the bottom of the deck, which was incorrect, but we should do that. So we get to kill the Dolly, get a counter. The Sphinx now has 1,500 or 800 damage on it because of the replacement effect. Now we run a risk here of him trying to block with the Vakis. Ultimately, though, it doesn't get him a lot of value to block with the Vakis, so we're going to try to swing in at the Sphinx. He declares no blocks, and so after no blocks are declared, we're going to go ahead and use Kimihe to put two -1/-1 counters on it. So it only has 1,500 defense. It took 800 for the enter effect, but then it took another 7 here from Shiva, so it does actually kill it. Paul does get to gain some life, but it gets the Sphinx off board, and then we'll slam down a Pollution Amplifier to kind of help our draw engine kind of come back. We do see an end of turn Robo-Meta here. Paul also playing Robo-Meta. It's a great kind of mid-range back-end finisher that is, you know, if you're playing any kind of splash green, you can certainly make use of it. Falchion comes in here, bounces the Shiva. Vakis is going to go in for 5. We're going to go ahead and try to flash in a Rogue Spectator in response to block it, just to avoid any kind of damage as much as possible. And we see a pass the turn. Plenty of will open to be able to interact, but I am working with quite a heavy heft of stones on my side as well. Drawing for turn, trying to make the Weather Pollution for the turn, primarily so that I can be a little bit more efficient with calling stones and doing Judgment this turn. We start to go into Judgment, and I go, oh wait, before I actually do Judgment, we should call a stone. This is a mistake on my part. I could have had one more stone here if I had called stone first and then done Judgment. So now that she's out, we're going to try to play this Replicant Shiva to try to get it so that she's dealing damage as -X counters. Normally Kimihe has Barrier, but unfortunately Surging Lightning gets around Barrier in the same way that Kimihe does. So a little bit of an unfortunate element for me. And because I haven't called stone yet, the missed sequence in there should have called stone, then performed Judgment. I don't quite have enough follow-up here. That being said, there is always a world where you can't read cards, and we pay 2 here for a Vega and Electra. This is the line that I would have been able to take if I had remembered to call stone, where we get to go get the Shiva Center effect still happened, right? So we still got to burn everything, and so then when we go get this armament, this chain sickle, the second it resolves, everything loses Eternal and Barrier, so the Falchion and the Robo-Meta have enough damage on them to kill them, but they don't have Eternal anymore. So they should be dead before the enter effect of the chain sickle, or the upgrade effect of the chain sickle even resolves to kill the Vakis, who again no longer has Barrier now, so he can be targeted by chain sickle. And ultimately this playline would fully tap me out if I had just remembered to call stone first. I would have had the stone to play 3 will for the Electra +1. I just also can't read, and so I only paid 2 for it instead this turn instead of 3 because I don't currently control a dragon. So a little bit of a misplay there. Remember to read your cards. Remember to sequence properly. But we do get to clear this entire board and put some good counters on the board here because we're going to be able to use... we're not going to be able to swing this turn because everything will be dead. But it puts us in a good board state here for Paul to have to answer. Double checking exactly how these work here, kind of explaining it in the moment. So Falchion and Robometa are both dead. No longer cannot gain barrier anymore either, which is nice. Passes the turn potentially. Gonna draw. Before I recover, he's going to go ahead and throw down a Sphinx. I think this is because he doesn't want to potentially walk into any kind of cancel stuff. Although you have untouchable, so I'm not sure why we would cast it here. We do get our free stone. We call stone, and then we tap Kimihe to go ahead and put 2 counters on the Sphinx. We're going to go ahead and proactively pay 3 to do a smokescreen bomb. The reason why we're not paying 0 is 1, it's our turn, and 2, we didn't want to worry about getting mirrored, right? I think that was the other reason why Paul might have played it on our turn, is to not get free smokescreen bombed while I was tapped out. So we have our 2 guys. That we shouldn't actually have our 2 guys because we weren't actually pollution, but now we're going to go ahead and God's Art, so the weather is pollution moving forward. We'll swing in for 6 and then 9, dealing 15, and then pass the turn there. Paul drawing a little dead here, needs something to be able to answer this board state or he is dead next turn. Aspiring Diva certainly helps. Last movement would be particularly good, although last movement would put the Shiva back in my hand, which he certainly doesn't want. Play another Aspiring Diva, see what else we can draw into. We do see a Thunder Empress's Strike. This is pretty good for him. Gives him some additional tools. Could be very useful to get rid of this Shiva because you could Thunder Empress's Strike into a Vacus, which could then, you know, answer both the Shiva and the Electra pretty handedly there. Even a Dolly could ultimately bounce the Shiva back to hand, though again we're in the same boat as before where you don't really want to give me the Shiva back. With my stones though, I'm not really projecting another Awakening of the Flame King, so putting it back in my hand would mean that it would probably be a main phase action, which opens me up to being answered by things like Girl Staring At, based on what's in Paul's hand. Thunder Empress's Strike comes down here. We're going to try to use Pollution Amplifier to draw cards, see if we can draw into a replacement. Not sure what the mode is here. Looked like it might have been to draw 2 cards. I think getting a Resonator probably would have been better, because again, a Vacus here would get to expel the Shiva. We do see a play of a Dolly off of that just to continue to cycle. Before recovery here, we're currently locked to main phase only because of the mirror that he used to draw. But so getting the rapier didn't really help here at all. You do see that one of Moonshade Stone, that is the Vanguard Moonshade promo. I picked one of those up at Worlds. It's pretty cool. So this deck was just playing 1 Moonshade, so I thought I'd toss it in, and there it is. It's funny to put on screen. We're gonna try to draw another card during main phase because again the weather's pollution. Play another Pollution Amplifier and draw again, just to kind of again cycle through the deck. Now it's a matter of moving to combat. We're going to swing in with Shiva, choose to block with the Dolly, so we get another counter on the Vegan Electra. This takes him down to 700. If Paul pays any amount of life here, so if the stones aren't used for double whites, he's in a bad spot because I can at this point in time just burn him to death with the Vega. But we're going to kind of threaten that by saying here's a Sympathy of Fire and Wind to burn you for 8 and finish the game off. So unfortunately, Paul did not have any answer there, so we got to go ahead and move on to game 2. So game 2 here, you see these lowrights being put on the board. This is Azure returning the lowrights that he borrowed for locals this week, and Paul and I joking about the fact that he does not get to start with them on the field. That would be very strange. But we're moving in here. We're probably going to see some pretty similar lines. Paul is going second now, so he has a little bit more will to be able to play around with, and we'll have that extra card. Meanwhile, if I don't hit my draw engine online with the dashis, I could be in for a rough time. We do see the turn 1 go in for Dolly here. After choosing to call stone and not pay 3 for the reincarnation stone. With no 1-drop to play here, it feels pretty safe for Paul to feel like he could just go in. There is an inherent weakness again about Kimihe with Smoke Train Bomb, but at that point in time it would burn 3 of the cards in my hand, so I'd be down to just 3. So we're going to go ahead, and as he attempts to leave main phase, we're going to try to give 2 counters, and we are going to go ahead and Smoke Screen Bomb here. It burns our cards, but it gets the Dolly smaller, and it gets the Rayasnable off the board, so we can try to push in a little bit here, which is why we have Guardian Dragon. We got rid of the Rayasnable. We're going to get an Enter effect for sure. Let's ramp a stone and kind of get ahead of the pace here and start throwing a giant dragon at Paul's face. See an Aspiring Diva come down here, seeing what it grabs. It does get to grab him a mirror. We're going to try to throw a Guardian Dragon at his face after calling stone. We do see the Surging Lightning come down there. Playing a Pollution Amplifier. Hoping to see if we can potentially draw some cards. And we'll go ahead and do the God's Art here because I don't have a ton to interact with. So we're going to go ahead and make the Weather Pollution permanently. Thanks to Kimihe. Down comes the Rayasnable protected this time. You know, it's pretty safe. Aspiring Diva gets to swing in. We're probably still going to put -1/-1 counters on, but maybe not quite yet. Calling our 5th stone and then shoving a pass. Paul not feeling comfortable swinging with the Rayasnable. Can't risk a flash in blocker leaving itself vulnerable to something with quick cast or anything like that. Any kind of combat tricks, which I think is correct. Just swings in with the Diva because there's no reason not to swing with her. Paying 100 for black. We're going to try to play another Awakening of the Flame King, and then I realized that I can only cheat in a Fire Resonator, so I'm certainly not going to do that because I don't have one in hand. So instead we're just going to try to use Sympathy of Fire and Wind to do some burning, getting rid of the Diva for later and burn 8 to Paul's face. Float some blue in response. Gonna see a Thunder Empress's Strike. I think he's choosing it to draw 2 cards. There's a world where you might want to use this to grab a Resonator here just for more value. Something like a Falchion, which could put the Amplifier back in my hand and draw a card. Would certainly be a reasonable thing to do here. Grabbing a Vacus could do something here. It's really just based on what he wants to do. Do see the Vacus come down. Vacus is going to be able to expel the Pollution Amplifier, so there goes my draw engine. This is a good call from Paul. Back to the Sympathy. This is going to successfully burn for 8. We're going to draw for turn. Before recovery, we're going to go ahead and ramp a stone. This is really great to be able to grab our other Magic Stone of Reincarnation so that we don't have to worry about paying for it. And then we get to move to recovery. Once again, missing an opportunity here to try to go for 2 additional +1/+1 counters, or minus counters, to make our later smokescreen comms better. So that's just a little bit of a sub-optimization from me. We do see Guardian Dragon of the Kingdom come down here. Gonna get to, doesn't get to Ray up a stone, but it does, you know, represent a very big body that Vakis can't double tap and kill just because of how big it is right now, which is nice. It's getting +14. So not killable by Vakis, which is a good spot for us to be in. Down comes the Robometa. We're hoping for an opportunity where we can try to mess with some stuff here, get some plays happening on this Ray Asnable to open our enter effects back up. Robometa is trying to put some counters on. We're seeing if we're going to take advantage of this opportunity when Paul is low on will. Can't add any more -X counters to anything, at least through Kimihe. So a little bit of a unfortunate missed opportunity here for a smokescreen bomb, though because Paul's tapped out, we don't want to have to deal with the Robometa. There's a world where we use a smokescreen bomb now to force the Dolly and the Robometa to be gone and put 2 -1/-1 counters on the other 2. So we're just going to go ahead and hard cast this smokescreen bomb for 3 to try to, again, force the Robometa and Dolly to go away, and we'll put 2 -1/-1 counters on everybody else. This sets us up for future smokescreen bombs. Oh, no, I decided to make some tokens, which I think is ultimately incorrect here, because the Vakis can just eat them since it's before recovery. Could have made them both much smaller and set up for the next smokescreen bomb, but you know, sometimes you just you get too hyper-focused a little bit. Drawing for turn. Seeing if there's anything before recovery. Once again, missing the opportunity to apply -1/-1 counters. Just really not using Kimihe optimally here in this version. No enter effect is certainly a problem. We're going to go try to swing in with this big dragon. Down comes the Surging Lightning to eat it. Now we're going to apply some minus counters to the Vakis. The Vakis is then going to eat the token. And then before recovery here, we're going to try to see a Thunder Empress's Strike to probably draw some cards. We're going to spawn with that with a command point. We don't want Paul to have cards. We are trying to burn him out of resources. Ultimately, that is going to eat a mirror. So we are going to get to draw 2 more cards. But he burned 2 cards to draw 2, so that feels fine for us. And he's burned his 1 de-randomize for the turn, which is also very good. The problem now becomes trying to answer this Asnable, right? That's the biggest piece. Callstone Pass from Paul after swinging in with the Vakis. Gonna try to solarize the Shiva. Doesn't have an enter effect, so solarizing doesn't change anything at all. If anything, it just makes the card cheaper. We have -X counters on everything on Paul's side here, so if you can try to find a way to pump it up by 1, we can start killing that Ray Asnable. Replicant Shiva will be able to kill the Vakis at this point as well, which is very nice. Gonna attempt to try to move to combat. We get to successfully kill the Vakis, and now we have a bigger Shiva. And now comes the Sphinx. This to me is interesting. I think it signals to me that Paul is trying to just push lethal here with multiple bodies. Taking advantage of potentially winning the minigame rather than worrying about trying to save it. There's also a world where you were supposed to save the Vakis with the Sphinx, but again, that walks into a potential issue with Smokescreen Bomb or some other concerns. or Daji, although again, Daji doesn't have an enter effect. We try to cast the Fairy Tale Mad Hatter. We thankfully do have Fairer Spell to stop that, so one less body. So only a couple bodies threatened here on the board. We're going to play the mini game and see what happens. I do guess correctly, so I get to gain the life that will then be granted to Paul once he swings. And then we're in a pretty bad spot here because the Shiva will have to swing in to the Sphinx. Even though it won't die, it's free life for Paul, and I don't have Daji to take away from it. So Paul can just kind of start gathering up advantage in the life total that it will be hard for me to overcome. Daji's a main way to be able to help with that, and just not seeing it will be rough. We're going to try to see a Robometa come down here at end of turn. Now this can be helpful, right? Robometa can be useful here to be able to help answer this Sphinx, especially since we have the 2+1/+1 counters on the Shiva. That'll be enough damage to be able to kill the Sphinx, which is very good. We try to put some counters on Robometa before recovery, seeing what happens. Down comes a girl staring at, now that it has all these counters, so blanks us for the turn, and then a random walk as well. All that work done for the Robometa gets shoved to the bottom of the deck. Very good play from Paul here. Really needing to answer this Sphinx probably this turn. No enter effects makes it really, really rough. Calling our last stone. You ever think you'd get to 10 stone calls nowadays in Force of Will? Well, we do it here on Ruler School. Another Shiva from hands doesn't help us here. We're going to try to perform Judgment. We start by trying to perform Judgment to do Kimihe to be able to have our damage to the Sphinx be done in -X counters. And then I forget that I don't, that I'm under girl staring at. And so, I'm dumb. So, this doesn't actually help me at all. So, realizing that, still having the Kimihe flipped, we're going to go ahead and just pay 3 for a Smokescreen Bomb to try to clear the board. So before I have to move into combat, because again, at least we're paying there. But Paul does have the Fiola, and I do not have the answer for that in the form of the MQ9. So with that, it's a quick scoop it up, and we go to game 3. So here in game 3 here, taking the coin as Kimihe. This means that, you know, I don't have to deal with a turn 1 Rayasnable, which feels nice. I do have to deal with Rayasnables in general, but I also need to remember in this game to make use of Kimihe's stat nag ability way more frequently. There was just a lot of missed opportunities there that were wasted because I did things outside of the main phase. So we see this Diva come down and unfortunately whiff for Paul. Not a great spot. We do see a Magic Stone of Reincarnation that we're going to go ahead and call stone, pay for to call stone. Paul does clearly have a Rayasnable in hand, so we're going to go ahead and Lorite the God's Art. This does cause Paul to burn the Rayasnable, so he will still get access to the Dolly here, but that's fine because the Dolly now, you know, can't possibly play a Rayasnable, right? Paul will be still sitting on 2 will going into my turn 2, have 2 bodies on board. I've only got a measly little Lorite, though the Dolly will be made smaller and the Lorite can block the Diva, so not a ton about what's going to be able to come out of here, but obviously Paul's off to a good will advantage here in the early game. Choosing to take the 3 from the Diva, we're going to go ahead and, as he leaves main phase, try to put the 2 -1/-1 counters on the Dolly just to make it smaller. Trying to think about if I have any cards here to be able to make a play. Ultimately, we say, nope, that's fine. I'll just go ahead and pass, ship it to you. Paul also calls stone and pass. At the end of turn, we start to try to think about applying the neg1 counters as he leaves main phase, and then we realize, no, we're just going to take the damage from this swing. We're going to flash in a Robometa. That is going to burn a mirror. We'll try to flash in a Rogue Spectator as well, just to kind of put some pressure on. Draw, then recover. Attempt to move to combat. We're going to try to hit his Diva for 4 just to get it off the board. See a random walk come down there. So just like that, a green card is on the bottom of a red deck. I do have another sleeve if I need to shuffle it, so I can keep track of it that way. But for right now, we're going to keep it in the green sleeve. Paul draws for turn. Banishing the Diva here and paying 1 to play a Thunder Empress's Strike. We do have the Fairer spell to be able to answer that, which feels very good. We're in Sphinx range now, but a Sphinx by itself full tap out isn't that particularly scary. We do see another Aspiring Diva come down here. Gonna try to dig Paul into some additional value. Unfortunately, does not hit a chant there. Feels pretty good for us. We're gonna go ahead and do Sympathy here to try to burn the Diva and burn Paul to make it so that the Diva gets as little value as possible. Gets cracked immediately to serve a Thunder Empress's Strike. Question becomes, what is Paul going to do with it? To see, draw 2 cards and get a Robometa here at the end of turn. Seeing a pass. Fifth Stone. Swing in for Robometa. Doesn't have any power counters on it, so we can block it. It does not currently have flying, which is nice. Lowrite has served his purpose and goes to the grave. And at the end of the turn, we're going to go ahead and pay 100 to try to play that Awakening of the Flame King. Try to cheat in a body. Paul says in response that he's going to play Muse Staring At, or at least thinking about it. Thinking about how he wants to pay for it. Muse Staring At here. We say, you know what? That's fine. We're going to choose not to cheat in anything. Well, we did get the Dolly off board, so we can at least call Stone, and then we'll just move on and do what we're going to do anyway by paying full cost, which is just play a Vega and Electra. This is a really nice way to answer a Robometa. In response, we're going to see Paul trying to put some power counters on Robo. Doesn't super help though because of upgrading Chain Sickle. So it'll destroy him, target him because he doesn't have Barrier or Eternal, and then can shoot him. So even if you upgrade, it's not going to be able to survive. Now we're feeling pretty decent about this spot. But now we're also going to be in a bit of a race. Phantasmal Mad Hatter comes down here. It's unblockable. I can't attack it. I have to burn it somehow. So Paul's going to be able to chip with it and then protect it, potentially putting additional stuff on field in the meantime, right? So this is just going to get to keep swinging every single turn. So essentially putting me on a 5-turn clock. During end step, we're going to go ahead and pay 2 to play the Robometa, just to try to put our pressure on board here. Swing in for 9. Paul decides to take it. We're down to 21 all. And then we pass the turn there. Now I can stem the bleeding a little bit by using Kimihe to try to put neg1 counters on this Mad Hatter, but I am trying to save it for something like Sphinx, so that I can try to answer the Sphinx a little bit faster. Do see a Call Stone from Paul. Down comes the Dolly. Gets to just cycle a card here. Does starting to feel like Paul might be running out of tools. And just the pressure from Kimihe is getting to him. Swings in with the Mad Hatter. It's unblockable. It's going to hit me for 7. Take me down to 14. 2-turn clock at this point. Though with the amount of counters I have, RoboMeta will be pretty heavily threatening lethal next turn. One thing that I realized here is that with any kind of burn that I might have after getting the counters on RoboMeta, if I do have a way to remove the Dolly in response to a block, I do actually just have lethal here. We do see a girl staring at come down, but thankfully we have the MQ9 counterpoint to say, no. I like having abilities for this turn. I need Eternal and Barrier and being a 15-15. Excuse you. Thank you very much. Swinging in for 9. Blocks with the Dolly, swinging in for 15, takes ball down to 6. Now here's something that happened here in the moment when I was with Paul here. I was looking at the fact that I could burn him for 6, and I had misrepresented what his life total was on our life tracker in person. I believed he was at 7 life, which was 1 outside of range. But in this position, I could use, with him being at 6, I could actually just pay 7 life essentially to be able to have the Vega and Electra finish the game off. Instead, we're going to go ahead and toss down this Daji. The answer effect to take him down to 1 would get us there, right? But ultimately, we also just want to be able to draw cards. We do see a pitch of a Ray Asnable just to stop me from burning him, because Paul also knows that if this Daji gets to resolve its answer effect that he dies, thanks to, you know, the activation of Electra that is available. Seeing if Paul is going to do anything else during his turn. This is a big piece here. There's a big question. He's going to do anything else on my turn to try to help him close out the game? Or is he just going to play a little bit of control? Ultimately does pass the turn. We're going to try to use Daji to draw 2 and discard 1 before he draws for turn. Seeing what we can see. And if you're asking me why we didn't just burn him with the vegan now, because we have to pay Will for darkness sources right now, we can only burn him once. And we couldn't even afford to pay to burn him twice without causing it to be a draw. And I'm not having it to be a draw on the channel. So we're seeing Daji attempt to get cast here. Paul's looking through his graveyard, thinking about what he might have here in response to the Daji to try to make a play. It would come down to my draws, like what I'm drawing here, but this is before draw on his turn. Feeling pretty confident that we're going for the lethal line. Paul really thinking hard here in the tank. If this Daji gets to draw, I mean, he's at the mercy of what I draw, and it could potentially just be the game. So there's a world where it's like, how much control do you want to be able to have? Really thinking it through. Not quite sure what's going to happen. Does eventually need to make a play, though. Does know that he can't afford to pay any life, though. So he goes in for a Thunder Empress's Strike. And thankfully, we do have the MQ9 control point here to rip that off. There's no mirror. But even if there was, that would cost him to die because of the Shiva effect, or the Vegan Electro effect. And we did draw into exactly what we need, closing out game 2-3, similar to game 1, with a Sympathy of Fire and Wind to burn him out. So there you have it. That is the match. Deck profiles for both lists will be up later this week. And until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.